If you look around my office, you might realize I have kind of a love for dark, twisted cartoons. And a lot of that may be because I grew up with a lot of dark, twisted cartoons. Now, I'm not talking about the ones like Batman or ones that were meant for older kids. I'm talking about the ones that were meant for little kids, and they probably should have been made for little kids. And I loved the hell out of them. I enjoyed how much they scared me. I loved how every time you got through one, you felt a little tougher. So I'm doing a series reacting and reviewing them. We're gonna analyze how creative they are, how dark they are, and if the dark, twisted tone was warranted. So join me in taking a look at some Dark Toons. Let's finish out Courage Month with one of the most requested episodes that just happens to be the last episode. Perfect. I think it only fits to end on this one, so let's take a look. So this is an episode I'll admit when I saw, I didn't think it was that dark, and when I start to look over the reaction that people had to it, especially growing up, and how much they could identify with it, I guess I saw it a little bit more, but I did really like it. I really thought this was trying something a little different, and I like that even in the last episode, they still mix it up a little bit and try new things. You'll notice the farm and the surroundings aren't quite as weird or dark looking as usual, and that's because a lot of the more creepier and darker elements are gonna be in the dream sequences coming up. Actually thought this had more of a Wile E. Coyote feel to it with the rock formations in the background there.
You did it wrong! Just like you painted the chicken coop wrong.
So Courage is being bawled out for doing a lot of things wrong, my personal favorite being attending to the windmill. That's really funny. Courage obviously takes this very hard, and at the same time, the farmer gets a bugle in the mail. But it doesn't sound right because it has a crack on the side.
Why don't you come help me make baklava? I've never made it before.
Once again, he screws up, he's trying to open these nuts and instead accidentally breaks the table, and then suddenly this character pops up.
You are a disgrace.
It's this perfectionist teacher that only Courage can see, and it's never explained what she is or where she comes from. I always assumed it was just his stress, anxiety, paranoia, everything thrown into this one character pretty much. And he's very much interpreting it as he's a failure, he needs to learn how to be better, and this is the physical form of that.
Eyes ahead. Even steps.
That's a really great angle there. Again, I haven't talked that much about the angles or colors in this one because, again, that's more for the dream sequences, but this one's really nice. Look how large that post is compared to everything else. It's so out of proportion, it's wonderful.
Can you speak correctly?
So I kind of like this idea that now there's this chalkboard up there, but it's kind of shaped like his computer. He always goes up to the attic and types on his computer, and now it's replaced by this chalkboard. It's very much like this is where he's getting his information from, and it's also teaching him at the same time, but the teacher has now become something that's very threatening. As someone who was not very good at school, I very much relate to this.
Now repeat after me. The turkey in Albuquerque is positively perky.
I like that Courage can usually speak English totally fine unless he's afraid. So I'm always kind of wondering if he's so afraid to get this wrong that he's kind of mumbling it like when he's afraid something. So is he trying to say this but getting it wrong because he's so terrified of her? Or, you know, another interpretation I just thought of here, too, because he is most likely fantasizing this teacher here, is it possible that that's how he's hearing his speech, too? Like, no matter what he says, he can't get it right. Even walking is wrong, and his speech is wrong. Maybe that's just how he's interpreting himself right now, like he's such a failure he can't even talk right. Even in his own mind to an imaginary character.
Look at the work of another of my pupils.
So not only is that really funny, I think that's the first really great shot in this episode. I mean, just look at the red, maroon, purple, yellow, pink. I mean, just that great mix of warm colors, but still against this really dark, shadowy background, and it's almost silhouetted, but then that just allows the tower to shine even more. The little lights on there really stand out, and then, of course, in contrast to how small the house is, it gives you an idea how impossible it is for someone, a student, let alone to put that all together. So it's both a really funny joke and also just gorgeous to look at.
Perfect.
And I think with the student on top of there too, they're making it very clear this is him not only imagining this person, but this is probably already in a dreamlike state. Even if he's awake, he's sort of hallucinating all this stuff, which again, I mean, if you've ever been under a lot of stress and anxiety, I mean, constant stress and anxiety, that kind of stuff can happen.
Your last assignment of the day is go to bed and sleep perfectly.
I love that too. He's supposed to sleep perfectly too. Like, what does that even mean? Like, physically sleep, or what he dreams is supposed to be perfect? How do you even measure that? But it doesn't matter, because he's the one that's interpreting all this and taking it all in, and he's the one that's essentially beating himself up. But the plus side is, if he's the cause, he can also be the solution. Deep episode. And this episode is very deep. You'll see. A nice touch having Eustace sleep with the horn, because if you didn't, you might forget about it, because you haven't really cut back to him much with that thing in a while, and so having him sleep with it's a good visual reminder, oh yeah, he has that thing, it still has a little crack in it, so when it comes back in again at the end, you know, it's not such a surprise, you're still aware of it. So this thing, I guess, lives in infamy. I guess this image alone has just given people so many nightmares. I actually knew about this image even before watching this episode, and I honestly thought this was going to be like the main monster of the episode, but it's not. It's just this little strange, surreal image that pops up and then quickly goes away, but just that short amount of time it was on, and with the creepy music and the way it's animated, it left an impression.
You're not perfect.
It is a really great design, and again, I'm admiring more and more how they use the CG in this show, because it is usually used for something otherworldly, and they use kind of the awkward state of CG at that moment, at least in TV animation, to their advantage. They made it look weird on purpose. They made it move weird on purpose. They really, really worked with it to a point where it really gave people nightmares. So really from here on out, we kind of dive into an Ingmar Bergman, David Lynch style episode, which is totally my shit. I really like that stuff. I really like when something doesn't have to stick to 3-act structure, somebody learning in the traditional way. You can find out something about him through kind of this subconscious imagery that is in all our minds. Not everything we think of always makes 100% sense, but that's kind of why it's amazing. I think that's the idea of the episode as well, is the perfection to imperfection. You'll notice too, the animation styles in all these dreams are a little different. Like, we clearly had CG, 3D animation there. This is more of a very simplistic Flash style animation. You notice it looks super, super flat, very sketchy and kind of undone, which I think makes sense for this. It's the Wizard of Oz. They're all undone characters. The only thing I miss is Dorothy. I really think they should have had him as Dorothy as well, thinking he doesn't have a home, because I think that's really what a lot of this is about, is that he doesn't feel like he's at home. He's not comfortable with himself. So I really think it's the one missed opportunity there. Here we have stop motion of a very popular dream a lot of people have, where you're performing and you don't have pants on, but in this, he doesn't have fur on, because of course he doesn't wear any pants. And I'm really enjoying how in the last episode they try all these different animation styles, even though throughout the whole show they would try different styles. I like that they kind of put them all in the final one. I think especially with dreams, they always feel otherworldly, like they feel real but not real at the same time. So I think trying a different style really, really helps emphasize that. Here we have another style with sort of this paper cutout look that is technically done with computer, but it gets the job done. You know the style that they're doing. I think looks really, really good. I think having the little scratches and dust spots on there, it just adds even more of like an old, ripped apart, creepy vibe to it as well. If you ever see some of those classic, scary, silent films, you know why that kind of look and that feel can really be uncomfortable. And you'll notice the story kind of disappears here, even though you have a setup with him feeling imperfect and this fictional character shows up, you know, hitting him with a ruler and everything. The narrative has kind of vanished. It's just these variations of different dreams, and again, I really think that's a cool idea to incorporate in a kid's show where there's always been some sort of monster to fight and the monsters have had different meanings and relevance and so forth. I really like this is just kind of tackling a feeling, just this idea of stress and anxiety and pressure. I think that's why people really connect with this. When they see these dreams, even though they're short, they really connect with them. They connect with feeling really uncomfortable and really just in a bad spot. That's why I really like a lot of the films from like Bergman and Lynch and so forth, is because they don't always need to tell a narrative that's wrapped in detail and stuff, because film can be all sorts of various things, and so can animation. So I really like that you can just get across a feeling. That's enough. If you can really capture a feeling and every single little detail about it without it having to tie into a detailed story, I still think you've really succeeded in something amazing. Look at the way he's drawn, man. You can just feel those tired eyes, can't you? Don't you want to, like, rub your eyes just looking at it? Ugh.
Everywhere you go for the rest of your life, everyone will know that you're imperfect.
I mean, right there, isn't that just so many people's fears in that one sentence? I mean, isn't that just like so much when you meet someone new, even if you never met them before and know nothing about them? Aren't you just afraid they're gonna know I'm imperfect? So again, I think this is really tapping into some very real stress that not only kids, but plenty of adults go through.
There's no such thing as perfect.
And here we get the lesson that, yes, you can see coming, but I like the surreal way they get across. The fish from before is giving him the lesson. You have no idea if this thing can actually talk or if this is just all in his mind, but something is giving him the confidence to be okay with being imperfect. I actually really like that this is the creature that's telling him this, because I'm thinking in most cartoons it'd be some sort of beautiful person or being or something like that, something that's very pleasant to look at. But no, it's this imperfect creature here. I mean, he has X's for eyes. He's probably dead. Again, Courage is probably thinking this in his mind. It's an imperfect messenger of this very important lesson. So I'm really glad they went along with that.
Would you like to try some baklava, Courage? It's more like gum, really.
So Courage sees even with her messed up baklava, it's more like gum, she says, but you can blow really nice bubbles with it. So she's taking something that is imperfect, but turning it into something that's unique and new. And you see the farmer's done the same thing. His horn is now wrapped up. It doesn't sound perfect, but it does have this unique sound now. And this is my favorite part. This is like my favorite thing to teach any kid. She's telling him to draw a perfect number 6. And he does this very strange drawing. She thinks he failed, but he reveals that when you fold it a certain way, it does make the number 6. He did the assignment, but he did in a completely new and unique way. A way that's not perfect, but is really inspiring and can teach you to think outside the box and adapt more and create more. And that's such a good lesson. It's a creative way to show that lesson. I mean, if you're gonna really teach people to be creative, you gotta teach them in a creative way.
Rotten, imperfect move!
So him thinking differently or imperfectly is what defeats her in the end, and he goes back to being, I was gonna say normal, but it's not really normal. I mean, he's wearing like a top hat and suit at the table, but everyone's celebrating their imperfections at the end here. You got her still blowing the bubbles, and him still blowing the bubble out of his imperfect horn, and Courage just being Courage while this dead fish gives you a thumbs up. It's bizarre, but I really wouldn't expect anything less out of the final episode of Courage. And there you go, that was perfect, and in its own strange way, it is kind of perfect. I really like stories like this, especially for kids that celebrate the beauty of imperfection. Perfection is great, mathematics, all that stuff, absolutely, but there's this really wonderful, unique joy and creativity and spark that comes from imperfection as well, and I really think this episode proves that to a point where it's like, even it's not the most perfect episode. I know it sounds so contradictory. It's like, well, is it perfect or is it imperfect? It really is kind of both. I feel like if this was just the best written thing, like everybody had like a 3-act structure, everything, you know, fell in place perfectly, you know, that would almost go against the message. So I kind of like it sometimes. It's a little clunky, but stuff still really stands out, and it's trying different things. It's taking a risk with the final episode in the different styles and the different way of telling the story, where again, the narrative kind of disappears and they just kind of go into these dreams, how they put all this effort into this weird blue CG guy that you never see again. But will people remember that, or will they forget it? Obviously they remember it. So I really, really like that even in the final episode that's praising the importance of being imperfect and trying new stuff, they are being imperfect and trying new stuff, and that really creates something that's fantastic and you can remember. And it's still being talked about today because people have recommended this to me, and I even knew that image of that blue thing before talking about this at all. Guys, that's about it for Courage the Cowardly Dog month. That doesn't mean I'm never gonna do any more Courage the Cowardly Dog episodes in the future. I will. It might just be a little bit, so don't worry. They're not all gone or anything. I mean, there's so many of these episodes out there, but I just felt it made sense because I got so many requests to do them all in one big chunk, or most of them I should say in one big chunk. So that's about it, and I guess I'll just go back to the normal credits where I ask you to, you know, tell me other ones that aren't courage based. It feels so weird. Hey everyone, if there's any particular cartoon you want me to look at as being very dark or twisted, leave it in the comments below. Again, I'm not really looking for movie scenes or cartoons meant for teenagers or older. I'm talking about ones meant for little kids, but still scare the shit out of you. Whether it's an old cartoon or a new cartoon, let me know what you want me to look at.